Is 3 straight losses for Iowa State what will keep Matt Campbell around, or is it potentially pushing him out of town? Honestly, I think it's about a 50-50.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Nick Marvitz. Thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're going to be talking about Matt Campbell and other head coaching positions that have opened up around the landscape. Okay, the carousel goes around and around, and we got to talk about it because we have one of the best coaches in college football. That I know for sure. And obviously, the loss to BYU makes things very interesting. Then in the second segment, we're going to dive deeper into this loss to BYU. And Campbell keeps saying, details. Is it details? Is it execution? What's going on? Why is Iowa State losing these games? We'll talk about that in the second segment. And then finally, to round out today's show, we got to find a silver lining. What went well in this loss to BYU? Because we got to, at least me personally, I have to find something positive. I can't wait to dive into all of that and more. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Let's go ahead and start with the big news on this big Monday. Brian Kelly out at LSU. I don't think a lot of people are shocked by this, but it does add fuel to the fire that is this coaching carousel. It seems like I've seen more coaches out of a job this year than any other. I don't know exactly what's going on, if it's the new landscape, but there is a mass, I don't want to say exodus because they're not choosing to leave, but there are certainly a lot of vacancies across college football right now. I got a list right here of some of the top ones. Obviously now LSU, but Penn State, Florida, Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, Arkansas, UCLA. The list goes on and on. This is not all of them. This is just the few that I chose to write down. There are a lot of positions open, and obviously Matt Campbell is going to be involved in all of those conversations. And I think that's totally fair because he is very good. Now, let's get this out of the way. Is Matt Campbell going to be the next coach at LSU? If you ask me, no, I don't think that makes any sense. I'm just going to completely squash that. I'm not here to have the conversation of, well, now that Brian Kelly's out, Matt Campbell's in. We got to prepare. Everyone hunker down, get your sandbags built up, be ready for impact, brace for impact. That's not what I'm saying here. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I do think it's valid to look at the entire landscape because there are so many openings. We're starting to get into chaos territory. The first thing that it made me think of when I'm looking at this entire landscape was when Alabama lost Nick Saban, right? And the whole waterfall of coaches that was impacted by that because you had DeBoer go over and then there's all of these, different openings. It's like it creates this major domino effect. And I'm wondering if we're going to see some sort of domino effect that could affect Campbell with all of these openings, right? There are a ton of major positions open. This isn't a bunch of, MAC schools or Mountain West schools or Sunbelt schools, which I have nothing against those schools. I honestly love all of them, but you understand what I'm saying, how the top schools, when those vacancies kind of arise, that creates a trickle-down effect that I'm not going to say is going to directly impact Campbell, but it's going to shake up the landscape to such a degree that it's at least worth looking at. And we'll talk about the 3 straight losses and what that means for Matt Campbell. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is that waterfall, because I think that there's only a few schools that Matt Campbell might leave Iowa State for. Now, we know it's kind of got to be relatively Midwestern. I know Ohio State's been thrown out there. I know, not Toledo, came from Toledo. Notre Dame has been thrown out there. I think those jobs are completely safe. So really what it comes down to for me is if Matt Campbell were to leave Iowa State, it would have to be, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I want to be very clear, but I think it would have to be a perfect storm of not only the right place, right? Obviously, you don't want to go West Coast or East Coast. It seems like he's going to be a Midwest guy, all right? So you got to be in the Midwest. He's got to get a boost in resources, and he's got to get, I would think, a boost in college football national title likelihood. Okay. Now, not to say that Iowa State can't win a national title, but there is something to be said about being in the Big 12 is tougher than I would say any other conference out there. Now, there are going to be plenty of you that disagree with me, but let's just ride with that for this segment. Okay. Let's just all put our differences aside and consider the fact that the Big 12 might be the toughest place to win a national title. aside from the fact of, actual play, which I can already see the comments pouring in, but you've got a league that eats itself alive and only really gets one to the to the power, excuse me, not to the power, to the 12 team playoff. Well, obviously last year with Arizona State, this year we'd be lucky to get two. It's not impossible, but I think we would get lucky just because the Big 12 has such a difficult time getting teams ranked in the top 12. It's just what happens. So if you're going to eat your conference alive and only send one each year, it's going to be tough to win. And other conferences will have, therefore, a better shot, right? A higher percentage of teams from other conferences are making the 12-team playoff. So that was kind of the framework I laid out. For Matt Campbell to leave, he's going to have to go somewhere where it's relatively close to what he likes, what he knows, the Midwest. I'm just going to stick with that. It's got to have a resource boost. It's got to have a 12-team playoff boost, a national title boost, and the chances of him essentially pursuing that portion of his career. Because I think at this point we know he can turn programs around. He can foster success for a long period of time at a program. Now it becomes, and I don't think it's about money. I think it's literally just about, if you were to leave, it would be for a program where he could chase a national title, right? Multiple conference titles, something like that. Now, I want to keep reiterating the fact that I don't think that I'm not like circling this as a foregone conclusion. Yeah, he's definitely out. Where will he go? That's not what I'm saying. But those are all definitely factors I think that could play into this. Now, to dive into 3 straight losses, does that keep Matt Campbell or does that drive him out of town? I honestly think we have nothing to worry about. That is my one sentence takeaway. You can skip to the next segment, honestly, if you don't care about my reasoning. I think it's that simple. Okay. Obviously, we've seen down years from Campbell in the past, and he wasn't out then. I honestly think in some ways it helps keep him here. And I think that was the biggest thing after the Penn State opening was, well, look at Iowa State losing to Colorado. Obviously the Cincy loss doesn't look as bad now because Cincy's very good. Colorado loss still looks not great, and BYU's a good team too. But the loss to Colorado, who would want a coach that's coaching a team that loses to Colorado? I think that's actually a legitimate conversation. On some level, that is a meme, that is a joke. Everyone knows that Matt Campbell's better than one game, right? One game where you lose to Colorado, you've lost 2 straight. At the time you were 5-2. Like, it's bigger than that, right? I understand that. But on some level, there is an element of truth to that. If one of these top tier programs like LSU or Penn State is looking at all of the candidates out there and they have to make a decision, right? They're not looking at 2-3 years from now. They're looking at right now. Are they going to appease their donors? Are they going to appease their fans by bringing in someone who is struggling in the Big 12 right now? Probably not. Now, you, me, everyone that's in the Iowa State fan base knows what's going on with this team, right? How many injuries we've been through, the individual game-to-game woes of this team. We know, okay? I know. But all of the Penn State fans aren't going to understand. All of the LSU fans aren't going to understand. They're just going to see the wins and the losses to who, and they're going to probably freak out, honestly. If Matt Campbell were hired today, they'd be like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? That doesn't make any sense. So from those programs' perspectives, I think there is an element of, we do kind of have to keep these people happy, because with this new landscape of NIL and transfer portal and keeping your recruits and bringing guys in the transfer portal and having buy-in and all of that, I think Matt Campbell is better suited where he is, and these programs are better suited without him, right? They can get more actual dollar buy-in. They can get more buy-in from their recruits. They're going to be having to struggle with keeping guys recruited. Obviously, we saw what happened with Oklahoma State, I think is the biggest example, but also Penn State even, where their recruits are opening recruitment until somebody is named the head coach. And then they will decide now, where do they want to play? Well, it's essentially reopening recruitment for that entire class for these colleges. And I don't know. I personally think that Matt Campbell is a great pull, but I don't know if someone who doesn't know the Iowa State program and what they've been through, what Matt Campbell's done, if they would be as impressed, right? Just no conference championships, no 12-team appearances. Like, it's just on the surface level doesn't look super great. And I think a lot of fans and donors would be concerned by that. So I feel like the 3 straight losses is keeping Matt Campbell in town. And it's a good thing for us because we know just how good he is. I'm not concerned about Matt Campbell right now. Maybe next year, 2 years, 3 years from now, after Matt Campbell's won a national championship, maybe he wants to try and do it somewhere else, whatever. But for now, at 5-3 after this loss to BYU. I don't think he's getting poached, and I don't think he's going anywhere because we've seen down years from Campbell. We know he can rebound from this, no problem. Let's take a deeper look at BYU. What's going on specifically in this BYU game, but what is Iowa State doing? It's incurring 3 straight losses. It's honestly getting a little bit egregious. We'll talk about that coming up right here after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. And that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I saw some amazing deals. And my favorite feature by far is the fact that I can see the exact view from my seat before I buy it. You guys know I can't handle the maps. I want to see exactly what I'm going to be seeing. Game Time gives me that feature. Honestly, it's faster, it's cheaper, it's less stressful than any other way I have bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So Iowa State has lost 3 straight now after this loss to BYU, and that one was kind of ugly. Not because for the duration of the game was Iowa State getting beat. No, it was actually kind of the opposite. For a good portion of this game, Iowa State was dominating. Iowa State was, those first 27, 28 minutes, as I've said over and over on Saturday especially, Iowa State looked really, really good. And I just saw the Parker Fleming graph that was released of how bad did we lose? How bad did this team lose? And that was an ugly graph. If you haven't found that, you can find it on Twitter. I saw it from my account at Nick_Marv. But it just really paints the picture of how ugly that loss was. And a big thing that Matt Campbell has talked about all season long, especially during these troubling times, is details. We got to be better with the details. We got to be better with the fundamentals. We got to be better with precision. Look, I don't think I think we're past the details. Okay. You can talk about details when you're talking about, penalties, I guess. That's probably one that you could get into details. But I think at some point, what I'm seeing here is a lack of execution. I don't think it's a lack of knowledge. And I believe that's what Rocco said. I've got the interview pulled up here from Ben Hutchins' Twitter. And I agree with him. I'm not even going to quote him because at some point it becomes lack of doing the thing. You can have all the details written down in your notebook, but if you go to actually combine, substance A and substance B, I'm thinking back to chem class. I've got all the notes right here, but when I'm actually doing it, if I just only thing I need to do is pour this sodium hydroxide into this base compound or whatever, substance A into substance B, and I pour A completely off the side of the table. I missed the jar entirely. I'm like, yep, just got to get it right here. Boom. I just completely miss. That's not a details problem. That's an execution problem. That's what I'm kind of seeing from this Iowa State team. Now, the biggest, I can't believe I didn't talk about this more on Saturday. I'm going to be completely honest. The biggest just lack of detail execution to me was the stepping on the punt. Okay. And I don't even know where to fall on this. So you can let me know what you think in the comments. Is this detail? Is this execution? We're kind of playing, is it like one or the other at this point? It's obviously deeper than that. But stepping on that punt almost to me just felt like, and this is like a wild claim, and I'm not putting this on any one player, but on some level, it felt like the team was beat. And that's just not a mistake that you make if you're a high-level team. That's not a mistake you make if you're completely bought in. That's not a mistake you make if you're I don't know how else to say it, but other than if you're locked in. If you're locked in, you just don't make that mistake. And I talked about it with Iowa State maybe being cursed on special teams on my Twitter. I was like, there has to, I'm going to have to go comb through the years of Iowa. It's going to go back decades to find out why Iowa State can't hang in special team situations. What is going on in the special teams game? And what is the curse that is keeping Iowa State from seeing success in this situation? If it's a curse thing, I believe in that stuff. from a football perspective, then yeah, there was just nothing we can do, right? It's kind of like the Lions for a while there, or whatever. Like sometimes you just got to beat the curse, and once you beat the curse, you can move on. If it's a cursing, whatever. But if it's not, there is no excuse, in my opinion, for essentially being blocked into a almost dead punt. That ball is not actively bouncing. That ball didn't bounce backwards weird, and he was trying to get away. That ball was almost at a complete stop, and we went and stepped on it. We were blocking the BYU guy, and we were pushed into this ball. Now, I've heard online that this was a coaching point for BYU. This is something that Iowa State is susceptible to, something that they could take advantage of. Good on them. Good on them if that's the case. If that is the case, first off, that's a problem. And second off, that's such an easy fix. Like, you have control over that situation. I just don't in any way, shape. And I'm bringing up this play specifically because this is like that whole game in a nutshell for me. Like, in some way, shape, or form, that play perfectly encapsulates what happened. That play could have been so easily avoided. The first interception, pretty easily avoidable. I mean, it's not like it was a 50-50 ball. It was a literal gift. It was wrapped in wrapping paper. It came from Santa's sleigh right into the BYU defender's lap, right? And I got some comments, why are you not talking about the third interception? Because that one was kind of the same way. It was just like a throwaway ball. It's fourth down. Game's effectively over. There was time clock management, in my opinion, issues with the end of that game. It kind of was over. It just wasn't ideal, right? And the second pick, or not the second pick, the second pick, it was a third turnover. It was like, whatever. I just, at some point, this team needs to execute. That's what I'm trying to say with this segment. The details, I have no doubt that these guys know how to play football. I have no doubt that these guys know how to go out there and perform well. They need to actually do it. You can't win on just principle. You can't win in the film room. You can't win at practice. You have to win in the 60 minutes on game day, in between the white lines, right? Even if during those 60 minutes, what's going on up in the press box, what's going on the sideline, none of that, unless it's a penalty, has a direct impact on what's actually happening in the game. The 11 players on the field need to actually suit up and do the thing. At some point, I think it becomes an execution issue for Iowa State, which, is that a good thing or a bad thing that Iowa State seems to be having an execution issue? Well, on some level, it's a good thing, right? Because it means that we're close. We just need to actually do it. But on the other side, if they can't do it, then maybe that's the end of the sentence. They can't do it. And that's the problem. Now you need to change the strategy to something that they can do. That's the problem. So if you're going to, that's why I'm kind of getting tired of this, like details. Why don't we just do something? Like, go out and do it. That's where my mind is at right now. Even if your details are slightly off, which I guess is what they were claiming was happening, or what Matt Campbell was claiming was happening against Cincinnati and Colorado. Oh, our details were slightly off. We were really close on a few plays where our detail was off. I don't know. At some point, maybe then you have to change what the details are. Change what you're doing, because the execution for me just isn't there. We saw plays where they executed well, and they did it. I don't think the details from plays that were executed well and the plays that weren't are staggeringly different. I think it was this play. We came out. We wanted to play. We wanted to run them over. We had momentum early. We got it done. Then later in the game, we didn't have that fire. We didn't have the want to execute. It's not about details for me anymore. It's about actually going out and doing the thing, running someone over, catching the ball over someone. Every now and then you see some high effort play across the league, across college football, and you're like, wow, that guy wanted it. I'm not saying that Iowa State doesn't want it, but that's not detail. That's execution. The detail was gone on that play. He was out of position. That receiver his hips were turned around. The throw was off the mark. He came down with it. That's execution. That's what I'm talking about. On some level, detail only gets you so far. You need to actually do the thing. What did Iowa State actually do against BYU? What was the silver lining? I've got that coming up right here after this. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So the loss to BYU was not a fun one, okay? We can all agree on that. And I am struggling to find an area where Iowa State looked better than others, aside from just looking at first half versus second half. But I think there is one, okay? I think that there is one area where Iowa State actually played very well. I think it was the offensive line. Now, we're not going to necessarily look at pass protection as much in this one. I'm more so looking at run game, okay? I think Iowa State blocked very well against BYU and gave the run game the opportunity it needed to make an impact on this game, okay? I saw a graph or a chart or whatever, statistics that was talking about the best lines in college football this last week, and Iowa State was number one. Now, I have to say I'm kind of shocked by that, and I don't have it up right here. Apparently, it's impossible to find. I don't know why it's not working. I found it on my Twitter at Nick_Marv. But if you saw it, you would probably have been surprised as well. Then you look at the box score and you realize Carson Hansen ran for 16 carries for 152. Abusama had 9 for 63. On the day, if you exclude Rocco Beck's negative 31, which was kind of ugly, between Hansen and Sama, they had 210 yards. They had, 215 actually. That's a pretty good day on the ground. BYU had 103 on the ground total. Bear Bachmeier, their leading rusher. Now, obviously, LJ Martin exited the game early, and I did say that if we were able to shut down LJ Martin, I felt like Iowa State was going to be in a good position. We obviously never root for injuries. That's not something I'm going to do. But with LJ Martin out, it was kind of like we shut him down. It wasn't like Iowa State shut him down. He just wasn't a factor in the game, and I think that was a big part of this. I feel like this game fell apart for so many reasons, but Iowa State was semi in it for that reason. Nonetheless, when you consider that even, Iowa State still doubled up BYU in rushing yards. I think that's something that Iowa State can build on the rest of the season. Now, are you always going to be able to rush for over 200 yards with your top two backs? No, you're not always going to get that opportunity. But I think there is something to allowing the run game to take over when the pass game is not playing very well. Okay. And now this is not a shot at Rocco Beck. Okay. We'll try to keep this a very happy, friendly show, like very positive show. So I'm not taking a shot at anybody here, but I think we can all agree every team, every quarterback goes through times of feast and famine, right? You're going to have drives where you just can't miss. You're going to have games where you go 19-20. You're going to have drives where you throw a couple ugly balls. You're lucky to get away without a pick, right? That's kind of the reality of the quarterback position. It's a difficult position to play. You have to be able to read the defense. You have to be able to throw the ball on time to a very specific place, and in some cases, alter the path of the ball to drop it in a bucket or put it on a line or whatever the case is. Speed, accuracy, all, especially intelligence, all name of the game, right, at the quarterback position. It's difficult to do. On some level, running the ball is just like, give it to this guy who's standing right here and let him gain some speed in these 3 yards behind the line, and then just have him explode through the offensive line and just either run someone over for a 3-yard gain, really impose your will, or go up, just take off up the field. Obviously, we all know Carson Hansen's long as 65, and I will give BYU credit on that chase down tackle. Big part of this game. But nonetheless, you get what I'm saying, right? I think that there is an element to, if it's not really working out, we have through the air, we have the ability to ground and pound, to run really tough on some teams. And I think we should probably look into that more. There are two backs for Iowa State. This is groundbreaking news to you if you're listening to Locked On Cyclones all the way to the 25-minute mark. I appreciate every single one of you. I know this is groundbreaking news to you. Iowa State has two backs, Carson Hansen and Abu Sama. Okay. I am noticing more and more, and I know that you guys all know this, that there is a very clear difference in run styles between Hansen and Sama. Okay. Hansen is effectively a freight train. And I tweeted this out. I said, watching Hansen get north and south is just beautiful. I mean, he is just willing to put his nose in there at full speed, get uphill, or I guess it'd be downhill, or fight the uphill battle if you'd rather it that way, and run someone over. He doesn't really care if the hole is fully developed. He's going to go. Okay. Abu Sama is more like watching Le'Veon Bell, right? What would that be, like 2017 maybe? Back when it was AB, Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell. Was it Martavis Bryant? That was the wide receiver out there as well. Fun Pittsburgh team to watch. But that was right around Le'Veon Bell's prime, right before he held out. That is kind of like what Abu Sama is doing. A little more patient, a little bit more shifty, a little bit more air Sama involved. It's not like he can't rush. He's just a little bit more shifty with it. I think that there is an element to both of those running styles, and I think it's good to have both those guys on your roster. Honestly, I think Iowa State needs to utilize both more. Obviously, after a 65-yard run, that'd be a good time to maybe swap out your running back, your starting or number one guy for your number two guy who's also just as good, even if it isn't as downhill. I think Iowa State has both of the running backs of the current age. I think Iowa State has both of the styles that you can attack a team with, right? You can either play the lateral, like horizontal style run game, the kind of make a man miss. The hole's kind of got to be there, but he's got the speed. If he gets to the second level, he's going to make a man miss. That type of running back versus if it's 3rd and 1 and there's like sort of a hole, Hansen will literally run over an offensive lineman and just get it. Right? Those are two different types of running styles. And I think Iowa State is lucky to have them both. And I think they probably need to use them a little bit more in these coming few weeks. I also want to point this out here for a little special nugget. If you listen to the last 27 minutes, shout out to you. You can go ahead and comment. Let's comment Freight Train if you made it to this point. Iowa State hit really hard against BYU. I thought their defense was good. They gave up 41 points. I understand that. But I wasn't going into this one expecting the defense to hold BYU to under 10. I came into this, I said 31-30. Without the interception, BYU scored 34. Right. So, or the pick six, right? And I guess I didn't even talk about the pick six earlier. That was the one that I was forgetting. Their defense, our Iowa State's defense came to play. They hit downhill. They were flying around, especially early in this one. Stick around for tomorrow. I'm not wrapping this episode up yet, but tomorrow I am going to be taking a look at how often did Iowa State bring pressure? Because it felt like they got away from that in the second half. I'm going to compare when Iowa State basically had the momentum to when they didn't, and how did the defensive strategy change, because I know I personally need to take another look at what John Haycock is doing. If you agree, good. Let's do this together. That'll be tomorrow. But from the general defensive standpoint, I was impressed with they pointed this out on the broadcast. They are coming to play. Iowa State's defense is coming to impose their will. They're forcing BYU to feel their plays. You're going to run it? Cool. We're going to make you feel it. You want to run it again? We'll make you feel it again. Think about it before you do it a third time. That was the kind of defense that Iowa State brought. Was it lockdown, secondary? No, it wasn't ideal. It wasn't perfect. Was it like ridiculous amount of pressure? No, they still gave up 17 points in the first half. And that touchdown at the end of the half was ugly. Now that was maybe more of a scheme thing, and we'll find that out tomorrow. But from the actual, what are the players doing? How do they look out there? I thought the defense looked a lot better. There was times against Cincinnati, times against Colorado, where I thought they looked, especially against Cincinnati, they just looked like they didn't really fly around. And I don't want to say anything too harsh. I've said those things before on the show about the defense. I'm not trying to say that here, but there were definitely times where they didn't look like they did against BYU. Let's put it that way. I liked what I saw from the defense, just level of urgency, level of, we might not be the best defense, but we're going to hit hard. It kind of close to what Arizona was, what we talked about Arizona being. They might not have the best players out there on the field, but they're going to make you feel it. They're going to fly downhill. They're just going to play ball. They're just going to force you to beat them. They're going to be tougher. I liked Iowa State's defense from that perspective. So I thought the run game was really a bright spot. And I thought the defense, while, yes, it did let up 41 or I guess 34, I thought that they flew around. I thought that they imposed their will. I thought they looked pretty good as well. That being said, that's going to do it for today. Come back tomorrow. We're going to do a deeper dive on what's going on schematically with John Haycock. Are we dropping 8 and still seriously giving up over 300 yards through the air? Is that what's going on? Something has to change, right? We'll talk about that tomorrow. So come back for that. Thank you for sticking around. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. It's completely free. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.